Welcome everybody. My name is Raju Gajelli. In this session, I'm going to explain you how to build a VPC from the scratch. This is my current design where I'm going to explain how to build a VPC, how many subnet groups we can create, and how many zones we are going to create those subnet groups, and the rules which states about network access control list, and the internet gateway which is being attached to a VPC, and finally we are going to discuss about routes, public routes and private routes. So this is a VPC I have, and we have two availability zones, availability zone A and availability zone B. In my region I have four subnet groups: public subnet groups 1 and 2, and two private subnet groups 1 and 2. Public subnet groups, I'm going to treat it as a public route, which means the internet gateway is being attached to this public route and which is being attached to subnet groups. However, the private route, which is not being attached to the uh, internet gateway, that is the reason I'm going to treat it as private route. I will go through these scenarios in this session in detail. Okay, now let's create a new VPC from the scratch. You can create in multiple ways this VPC. However, this is the best easy way. VPC name called global VPC. Good. And I need to specify CIDR block range. CIDR block range is which tells the range of IP addresses which are going to be used within your VPC. I'm using this range as 00016. There is a way to calculate how many IP addresses will be allowed within this CIDR block. I have added this in my design somewhere, maybe under comments. Sorry. Okay. So if you see here 172.0.0.0/16, now we can see these many IP addresses are allowed, starting from this and ending with this. Around total 65,534 IP addresses will be allowed within this class B range. This is a good tool. You can explore more on this, but now I'm going to use that. And tenancy, whether you can tell dedicated or default. Dedicated means you are going to have a dedicated host for your VPC, but the price will be varies. That will be decided by AWS when you do the purchase. For now I'm using the default one. Good. Now we have the VPC. Now next one, I'm going to create network access control list, but before that it's good to have security groups, subnet groups. So let me create four subnet groups quickly. Create subnet group. This is my subnet group 1, and this is my CIDR block range. And even every subnet groups you need to have a CIDR block range. However, this should be subset of your VPC CIDR block. So that is the reason I mentioned this one. Again, you have to specify your availability zone. I have two availability zones. Let me create the next one. Public 2, and I have the availability zone B, and I'm going to use different saddle block for this subnet group. Next time I'm going to create 4, 1, 2, 3, but this is a private one. Under A, next I'm going to create under B the private subnet group. Under A, public. Under B, public. Under A, private. I'm going to create under B another private. Good. So this concludes we have 4 subnet groups: public 1, public 2, private 1, private 2 under availability zone A, and availability zone B under my region. Now I want to apply network access control list. What is NACL? NACL mainly deals with inbound and outbound rules. Inbound rules gives you a kind of interaction to from the external world to your network. Consider you have a HTTP server which is running on port 80, okay, and that port 80 is being used by the external world people. If you want to access that, you can allow them to access. For that, you have to create an inbound rule. However, you want to send a response back to the internet again. For that, you have to create outbound rule. Why? Because NACL is not stateful, it's always stateless. Whenever you are defining a route, you have to define inbound rule, and when you are sending something from your EC2 instance to outside world, you have to define outbound NACL. So if you see here, by default when you create VPC you will get this default NACL, okay, but for now I'm not going to use this. Let me create an NACL for 2 regions. One is for the availability zone A and availability zone B. So let me keep my naming conventions like this. By default, when you create any network ACL, all the rules are denied. If you see here, everything is denied. Outbound rules are denied. I'm going to create another one. Everything is denied. Okay. Keep remember this. When you define any rule for network ACLs, the rules always executes the lowest number rule. I'm saying lowest number rule. If you see here, add another rule like rule number. This is the rule number. If rule number 80, you are allowing HTTP 80 from your source. You can tell your IP address or CIDR block range, anything, whatever you want to include here. This indicates rule 80 is allowed. However, if you tell rule 100 and the same 80 port for HTTP, and if you are using deny rule from the same source or different source from all, which rule is going to execute first? Which rule is valid? Here, the lowest number rule executes first always, irrespective of what you are going to have from the next ongoing rules. Rule 80 states that you are going to be allowed. Rule 100 states that it's denied. But the outcome is always allowed because 80 rule is the lowest number rule. If you add another rule called 60, and if you say HTTP is denied, so 60 rule is denied, 80 rule is allowed, and 100 rule is denied. So as I said, the lowest number rule executes first. That means 60 executes first. What it states, 80 should be blocked irrespective of what we have. So the deny is going to be executed always. For now, I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to save anything. So this concludes the NACL. And the next one I'm going to create is routes. I want to define routes. So let me create, by default when you create a VPC you will get a route, but I'm not going to use this. So let me create a route. I'm going to define the route name as like this: public route and private route. Okay, this is default entries will be included. Okay, and private route, I have two routes, one is public and one is, oops, I put the wrong name, but it's okay. So this has a private route and one public route. But how will you ensure that this is a public one or this is a private one? For me, by seeing these, I don't have any differentiation here. I don't have any differentiation. Both are same. Well, I don't have any internet gateway. So if you see my design, I have attached an internet gateway to my VPC. First, let's create that. Okay, global IGW. I created a internet gateway and I want to attach this to VPC. Keep remember, only one internet gateway will be attached to one VPC at a time. So now comes to these route tables. Let me go to public route. Public route means this route should be assigned to your internet gateway. So let's come here. You can tell your destination. For now I'm using everything, and you can see here internet gateway 0C71 global IGW. This public route is being assigned to internet gateway. That is the reason you are stating this as public route. However, if you see here, I'm not assigning any routes, any internet gateway. That is the reason I'm saying this as private route. So public route indicates if anything internet gateway is attached to a route, then that route is treated as a public route. If there is no internet gateway attached to a route, then we are going to treat it as a private route. But this is not end of the story. In the public route, what you have to do, you have to define your subnets, because if you see in my design, this public route now being attached to the internet gateway, that is the reason we treat it as public route. However, these two subnets should be assigned to this route. So now I'm going to associate these two subnets, these two public subnets, public and public, to this route. Now this concludes the public route is available to these public subnets. That means any traffic which is coming from and going to internet is now associated via this route. When it comes to private route, as I have not attached any internet gateway, however, I'm going to associate these two subnet groups. These two subnet groups. So for that, I'm going to provide you private 1 and private 2. That's it. This concludes, we have defined a VPC, we have defined an internet gateway, and we attached internet gateway to the VPC. Then the third step is we created network access control list. However, we have not defined any rules. Everything is denied now. We created two network ACLs. One is for one availability zone and one is for the another availability zone. Then we created four subnet groups, two access public subnet groups and two access private subnet groups. But the public route, we created two routes, one is public and one is private. The public route is assigned to internet gateway, and that is the reason we treated it as a public route. However, these two subnet groups, public subnet group 1, public subnet group, no, group 2, is assigned to one of the public route. We have other two subnet groups, we assign those two to private routes. So this concludes the scratch VPC from the scratch. However, this ACL is not defined in this session. Next session, what we are going to do is we will define certain rules, inbound rules and outbound rules, and we will define some security groups for our instance. This is the default one, but I'm not going to use this default security group anymore. I'm not going to use these default ones. So next session, I'm going to tell you what is how we can enforce the traffic from internet to our any network ACLs and into subnet groups, and how can we create security groups for restricting ports, certain ports from IP addresses, so that we can conclude, we can explain in our next session. I'm going to conclude this session now. Next session we can arrange next session in the coming videos. Thank you.